Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast brought to you by Literal Humans. As always, I'm Paul David, your host and also founder and CEO of Literal Humans. And I'm joined today by Vojtech Oravec, the founder of Ranketta. And we're going to be talking about redefining digital visibility in the age of AI search. Welcome to the pod, Vojtech.
Hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course. I understand you just got back from Austin, Texas, South by Southwest, and you want to move there. So we're really glad to have you on the pod after your big trip.
Yeah, I have to say Texas convinced me to move there, and especially the people. They are very welcoming, and the culture is starting to move more from San Francisco to Austin, which is amazing, and I really like that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see. Well, great. Well, let's get you introduced here. And so Vojtech runs Ranketta, which is an innovative platform that helps companies measure and optimize their visibility within AI-driven search engines and answer engines like ChatGPT and Perplexity. Vojtech has a deep background in AI and software development, having worked as an AI research scientist at the Czech Institute of Informatics, Robotics, and Cybernetics at CTU in Prague. He's also served as a product manager for enterprise solutions. And now he's building the tools that brands need to stay relevant as the world moves from traditional Google searches to AI-generated answers. Obviously, that's a topic that's near and dear to what we do at Literal Humans. It's a service we're now pivoting to provide for our clients. So yeah, this is going to be a really rich and interesting conversation. So let's jump in. First things first, to paint the landscape for us. So why is this shift from traditional search engines to AI-driven, answer engines? Why is it a crisis, or I should say an opportunity as well for modern brands?
I feel like people really like answers that are direct, and they don't want to go through 10 blue links like they used to have when they were using Google. Because when you type a keyword in Google, you have to go to 10 different websites, get somehow feeling for what's the best product, what's the best service for me, and then decide. But now with AI models, I can get the answer directly from a chatbot that will search for me, and that's really good from the customer perspective, and that's why most people or customers prefer using AI chatbots.
So give us a little bit more context. So, the rise of LLMs obviously changed the way that consumers discover products. And, you mentioned the blue link of the Google era. Brands, these days, they might feel invisible to AI. Maybe they've searched for themselves in a AI answer engine. What are some of the specific data points that companies that you find most of them are missing when they think about getting themselves to be visible, for AI search?
I mean, first or biggest mistake is that they block AI bots completely. This is pretty self-explanatory, so don't block them. And most brands are usually tracking the wrong metrics. I saw brands that rely on API approximation, so they ask API different questions about their brand, but the API is not real data. It's very different, and the AI model behaves differently in the API compared to the actual user interface. So it's one of the first mistakes. And some companies we work with that are specifically from e-commerce and direct to customer sometimes focus on wrong metrics, and they are tracking the brand visibility, but not a product visibility, which is the more important metric for them. They sell products, so you have to know which products are mine and which products are being recommended. You don't really care about your brand, your name of the e-commerce store, and that's basically 3 mistakes I see all the time.
And help us understand that there's been a lot of talk about the naming of this new trend. So there's GEO, generative engine optimization, AEO, there's, AIO, there's all this stuff. So help us understand, the naming of it. So are we looking at a fundamentally different technical architecture? Do we need to have different acronyms for each version? How do you explain this to your clients and customers?
I'll always tell them to use the same keyword and put it in Google, because you will always get the same answer. But if you do this with, let's say, ChatGPT, you always get a slightly different answer. So the technology that's behind it, the search engine or the large language model is very different. It behaves differently, and I feel like it's a fundamentally different game, but when you want to improve, the concepts are very similar. In SEO, you usually care about backlinks, domain authority, and you care about the position you're at. But in GEO, you care about citations, which are the sources that directly influence the AI answer. And that's very similar concept, but Google uses different sources, different metrics, and also LLMs use different metrics, look at different data, different citations, and you have to have the data for your specific search engine.
That's great. And let's move into talking about your product here. So Ranketta, your attempt here is to sort of bridge the gap between AI models and brand visibility, or I guess people not being visible, with the AI models. So walk us through the process of how Ranketta analyzes the LLM's response to see if a product is being recommended.
Yeah. First, we scrape the actual user interface and of engine like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini, and we scrape what the customer actually sees. And we track individual products or your brand mentions, and we analyze the whole answer the AI model just gave us. And we also analyze the citations, which are the small bubbles, because under the hood, the LLM usually go to Google or Bing, searches for some keywords, and decides which page they will cite or get information from. So we scrape all this data, and thanks to this, we can then tell you which source is most influential, what are the most common keywords that LLMs under the hood search, and how visible or how perceived your brand is, how AI perceives your brand, and how often it recommends it.
And help us understand, give us like a flavor of these kind of actionable insights that you give a marketing team so that they, maybe they're used to these traditional click-through rates and, rather than mention rates and some of the other metrics. So what do you give them and what should they be looking for?
We usually recommend optimizing or creating content. So we tell you, okay, this article is decently popular, I'll cite from it, but it could be improved. So let's say add frequently asked questions. So this is like a low-hanging fruit for people who create content, because it helps the LLM get answers and information from your content in a much more simple way. So you prepare the answers for the LLM. That's one of the recommendations. We also look at structured data, product pages. You can also enrich the product data. So let's say you might be missing a parameter on the product page that LLMs looks for. And we also give you recommendation on what keywords you should target. So we see, okay, this keyword has been really popular. I'm search for it very frequently. I think you should start targeting it.
And we'd love to kind of use that to jump into, your growth strategy. So obviously you spent some time in Austin at South by Southwest, and I'm sure you had some exciting conversations with people. So I'm sure your head is buzzing a bit about, how you grow Ranketta. How do you, really broad question, you're trying to redefine a category or define a category. So, how do you scale, a startup in a landscape that is changing so much every time, a new model drops? Let's start really high level.
I feel like you have to start with people. So you have to have really good team that can adapt to changes, a team that's really dynamic, because the category is changing basically every day. And it's also important to, of course, see all the changes that are happening in the industry and to react to them. But many of them are useless and we just ignore them. And I feel like it's fundamentally about the decision making. So you have to decide really fast, decide what's important for you and what's not. And also, it's very important to really define or explain the value of your product. The messaging is extremely important, and we care about each keyword and how we explain the industry, our product, and that's extremely important when you are trying to define a new category or when you are building something new.
Yeah. And it seems like there's like an education challenge here, right? So like, what do you think is the biggest hurdle, to convince brands that AI visibility is a must-have rather than a nice to have?
I feel like the biggest hurdle is making brands realize that their traffic is dropping, because it's not about bad SEO strategy, but it's because people are starting to use AI models more and not Google anymore. And it's really hard to convince them and to make them realize, okay, it's not our SEO. It's actually people who change their behavior, and now they use AI models and don't go to my website and don't click on our pages. So that's why our traffic is dropping. And many companies also wrongly believe that the paid ads will stay as they are forever, and the prices are always going higher, higher, higher. And I see many brands that solely rely on paid ads, which is also a awful strategy, because the price of paid ads has been going up each month, and your brand cannot rely on paid ads, because if you cut them, you basically lose all your orders and all your subscription. And so I think companies have to realize what's happening. They have to understand the shift, and after that, after they realize this, it's really easy to convince them.
Yeah, that's always tricky. And also thinking about the workflows that companies already have going for marketing and their general visibility on the web. How do you ensure that your tool integrates smoothly into existing workflows, or are you helping companies now create entirely different workflows and infrastructure to address AI visibility?
We try to not create a different workflow, and we try to use what companies are already using. We have integration for Google Analytics, Google Search Console, Looker Studio, Cloudflare, platforms like Shopify, WooCommerce, all the e-commerce platforms that they already are using. And we try to make it as easier as possible. We took a AI agentic approach. So we have our own model, which can orchestrate all the features in our platform, and it can actually get data from all the integration I just mentioned. And we try to be available to customer who is not so technical, doesn't really understand all the technical details, but we have an AI model that can actually explain this to even a complete beginner.
Yeah, that's cool to kind of like, push out some of the work of explaining these things to the AI model so that folks can do like self-serve a bit more. Would love to explore kind of your strategy for staying ahead of, just the competition, but also the big tech players who, they see tools like Ranketta and then they just release their version of it and they scoop up, all your demand and things like that. How do you try and stay ahead? And how are you thinking about the current phase that you're in? I think you said you're in the present phase. And what are some of the key milestones that you're looking over the next 12 months to stay ahead of the competition? Yeah, we'd love to hear more about your growth strategy there.
This was one of the first questions every investor asked me. Let's say Google, for instance. Let's say they publish a AI visibility tool which will track all their AI models. So they will track your visibility in, let's say, Gemini, parts, and all the AI models they have. But they won't track models from OpenAI or from Anthropic or from a different provider. So I feel like there's still space for a middleman who will be able to track all the platforms and give you the aggregated result. So that's how I look at the big tech companies that might release something like this in the future. And when it comes to milestones, we just raised our first pre-seed round of 1 million euros. And the key milestone for us is now to create a really good team. There's already 8 of us. I think after 18 months, there will be 15 to 20 of us, but who knows, it's a startup, it's a dynamic environment. And at the end of this year, we should be somewhere around 100K euros MRR, something like this. Those are our main milestones. And from a product perspective, we want to fully complete our Shopify integration, which is really important for us. And we want to scale the product as much as possible. So we just added our product enrichment feature. We can also create content for you, create content outlines. So it's not only about analytics, but it's about everything that comes to your mind when you say AI visibility.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you see, in terms of expansion plans, do you see Ranketta ever expanding into, automated content generation, or will you just stay focused on kind of measurement and analytics side of things?
When it comes to AI generated content, it's a thin ice. And I know that because you cannot really just take an AI and generate all your content just using AI. I feel like there must be some value that you provide with the content, and you can't just simply generate AI slop. But at the end of the day, the AI model or AI agent can actually do a research for you. And that's one thing we are definitely looking at, and we already have in our platform. So we do a research in the category you are trying to write your content for. So we take a look at the most performing articles, at the most search keywords, all this stuff, and we can do the outline and the research for you. And we can create also a body of the text, all that stuff. We are using a human in the loop approach. So we usually tell customers, okay, here's your article that you can use, but I recommend that you check it, read it, and improve some stuff. So there's a human touch and there's enough value in your article.
Yeah, definitely. We're hearing a lot about folks that, and to some extent, taking this approach ourselves. You can get a good chunk of the way there. You can use it for research and ideation, but you always need that human in the loop in that layer. And so it's interesting to see companies building that infrastructure of, okay, there needs to be human entry points and exit points at different points in the continuum, but also what value can we get out of it? Last question about your growth strategy. You stated that a primary goal for your recent pre-seed funding is to open a US beachhead. So yeah, practically speaking, what does that first move look like? Like, how are you planning that expansion other than maybe moving to Austin?
AI shopping is evolving incredibly fast in the US. So that's why we want to move there. In the US, it's possible to even pay for your order. And this is something that's not possible in Europe. We are a European startup, but we are about to incorporate our business to US. And I think I will move there fully because in the US, the businesses are actually ready for this shift. Europe always has been few months or years late to some changes. So that's why we want to go to US and we want to put the foot in the door. And I feel like if you want to expand in the US, you have to have a presence there. At least one of the founders have to be in the US. And what founders don't realize is that it's not possible to, I don't know, stay in Europe, do online meetings with the clients in the US and scale the company like that. In most cases, this is not possible. You have to go to US, have the presence, people have to know you, and you have to meet the people there.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. As we work mostly with US clients, and obviously we're a bit different. We're kind of a growth strategy partner and having a base here, but I'm always in the US. I'm there at least once a quarter, and if not more, and talking with people, meeting with people, and straddling both. But I think for us, we end up serving that market because we help them scale into the UK and EU market, and then vice versa for companies over here. So definitely feel you on like trying to straddle. And I think it's different for venture-backed, product-based companies, obviously, as you say, but I think it's an important learn.
Yep.
So let's jump into a few final questions just about your journey. You've become a founder, having been an AI researcher, and was there a specific moment when you were working as an AI researcher that led you to leave research and start your journey in tech as a founder?
I have to say, being an AI researcher is extremely difficult. And when I started with AI research, I was, I think, 19. at the time. So I was really young. I was working in a group of Tomasz Mikolov, who's really famous AI researcher, and his findings are one of the reasons why we have AI as a technology today. I had the privilege to work with him and with all the other PhD students, which were obviously 10 times smarter than I was. And the research is extremely difficult because you have to go through a ton of papers, ton of learning, basically math and combination of reading, learning. You're learning all the time. The industry is changing each week, basically. And it was really difficult for me. So I switched from AI researcher to a product manager at a Fortune 500 company. And then I was looking for a opportunity. I always wanted to build something on my own, some kind of startup, or at least build a new technology that will improve the world. So one of the changes I saw was the change in how people search for products, for services. And so I took this opportunity and I combined the experience I had from being AI researcher. So I feel like the analytics we have are much more deep level thanks to this, because I know how the LM work, how to perhaps influence it, and everything that we recommend in our platform is based on actual research, actual data. I also was able to combine my experience from being a software engineer or a product manager. So it all played out and connected together. So thanks to all my experience I got before Ranketta, now we have our startup and Ranketta is alive.
Well, thank you, Vojtech. We've really enjoyed this episode. I think, it's cool for us who work in growth strategy to see you building, kind of the new radar for the next generation of the internet. And I think as AI continues to change how we find information, tools like Ranketta will be, the difference between a brand being discovered or a brand being forgotten, which is what we don't want, obviously, in the work that we do. So thank you so much for joining us. And tell us, where can listeners learn more about Ranketta?
You can go to our website, ranketta.com with double T. I feel like there's a huge opportunity in front of all brands.
Yeah.
Remember how SEO started, and it was really easy to rank up and make a change, be the first, blue link in Google search. And I feel like we all have this opportunity now. So let's make the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting time, and you're right at the cutting edge. So, well, thank you for joining us, Vojtech. Really appreciate it. And for our listeners, this has been another great episode of Tech Can't Save Us podcast, brought to you by Literal Humans. If you've enjoyed the episode, and I think you have, please give us a 5-star rating, leave us a review, so that amazing guests like Vojtech, the founder of Ranketta, can be invited on the show. Thanks so much, y'all, and have a good day, everybody. Thanks, Vojtech.
Bye bye.